What's going on? SEVelocity back, episode 12, week 12, talking about NBA offseason stuff. A little bit slower right now because there's not as much. Well, we're fresh off free agency, but there's still not a ton to talk about versus the middle of the season. But still some good topics to get over. Got the Olympics, couple contract extensions, team projections for next year, and probably in the next few weeks we're probably going to look to do a all-time draft and see which one of us picks the better team, have everybody else vote. But without further ado, you want to say anything to the people before we get started?
What's going on, everyone? I've summed it up. We had the Olympics and yeah, all of the off-season moves that's happened so far between our last episode and today, and just can't wait to go in and discuss it. I know I definitely have some commentary on like some of the news that I've heard in terms of transactions occurring and certain things I've heard on other networks.
And um, also, I mean, this isn't going to be a really big topic on today, but NBA is starting quick right away into the next season because we already got summer league, which I think started today or yesterday. So really
Yeah.
fast paced into next year. Get to see some of the rookies play potentially, and some of the younger guys for the Knicks. Emmanuel quickly is back on there. Quentin Grimes, I believe. So the first topic, we'll talk. I guess we'll start with the biggest topic.
Yeah, let's start with the Olympics, I
Right.
think.
So
Uh, As expected, USA won another gold medal. Kevin Durant, now the all-time Olympics leading scorer, no surprise there. And I was honestly indifferent about it because I told you I really don't care about the Olympics, honestly, basketball. And I just have a quick question for you, Ed, because I know I did not watch any of the USA games. I only watched a portion of the final game. How many of the USA games did you watch in the Olympics?
I watched like three or four. I watched the France and USA one for most of the game, the final, and then I watched all of Team USA versus Australia in the semifinals, which
Okay.
keep in mind that was a pretty dramatic game. I thought thoroughly that no matter how much criticism Team USA was going to
Mhm.
get, they were going to win either way. They
Yeah,
just talent
we're
wise compared to
talented.
everyone else,
Yeah.
it's not close. So
That's why I deemed it not worthy of me watching it, and I got kudos to you because for actually watching the games. Because I know before the Olympics started, I told you I know I'm not gonna watch any of those games, and I honestly doubted that you were gonna watch most of them either. But you watched more than I anticipated, so kudos to you. But now I gotta ask ask you this: how does it feel that this is almost going to transition to another topic, but how does it feel that your boy Melo's legacy is now over thanks to Kevin Durant?
I expected Kevin Durant to pass him, and to be
Yeah.
honest with you, with the way Team USA was playing, I'll be straight up. Like they were the best team in the world still, but they did not look like any of the other previous Team USA's. Like every other team was
Yeah.
every other year they were blowing people out. This team looked way different because a lot of these games were close. So, but I
Yeah.
knew from the start if they were gonna, because regardless of how good your team is, there's always the chance that you're gonna lose. Whether it be bad shooting nights from a bunch of your players or bad defense, which was a big problem. The biggest thing that came across my mind is no matter what, Kevin Durant's going to carry the team because we saw what he did with the Nets, and I don't think he was going to be, as quiet as he is. You could tell he's someone that hates getting a ton of criticism. So, like, I know
Yeah.
with the Nets, he made sure he showed out to show everyone that no matter what he did, he put it all out on the floor to show that he was going to keep the Nets as close in the game as possible without Harden and Kyrie. So, I think that was the same thing with Team USA. No matter what was going to happen, he was going to leave it on the floor to make sure that he put his best foot forward, and he was killing everybody.
Yeah.
The Australia game though was absolutely terrifying because they were down 20, I think, at halftime or close to 20, and it wasn't necessarily just bad offense. Like Kevin Durant was making most of his shots, and he was making good plays. It was selfish basketball, so a lot of the time, whoever was getting the ball first was shooting the ball and taking it to the rim because they just felt they were better than everyone, which I think is can be an issue. But the big problem was defense. No one was playing defense, and that drove me nuts. I mean, there was some bad shot selection, whether it be from like Zach Levine or even Damian Lillard. There were some bad shot selections throughout the night. But Kevin Durant was the one consistent thing where um, as tough as the shot was, he was making everything, and that was the reason I think that they beat Australia because I think that game was harder than the France one.
Yeah, I mean, except that the very first USA game, I think it was Nigeria. Oh, when he got blocked on the game-winning shot.
Yeah. So like I think that I think also with that like they that was a scrimmage game, so I think they don't take that
Yeah,
as seriously. But
yeah,
the I think Popovich also did a good job towards the end of the Olympics to find lineups that worked really well. Like they I think the best combo that they ended up finding was having Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Drew Holiday together on the floor. Like those three worked really well. Drew Holiday played really good defense and he distributed the ball well, while Devin Booker was doing well as a shooter and Kevin Durant was doing good in all around part of the basketball. So I think once he found that combo, that worked really well and they started clicking. But I mean that was hard to watch because Australia was playing great defense too. Like credit to them, they were making some awful decisions down the line offensively, and I think that if they played smart, they could have maybe held the lead into the fourth quarter, but they were blowing themselves apart, and um, their defense was good, but the shot selection that Australia had was very bad. Like you had guys like Joe Ingles on Australia who was playing really good defense, and every shot that Team USA was taking was heavily contested. So I think that's a lot of things. That's one of the big things that a lot of other countries kind of preached, regardless of the offensive talent, to just preach defense, 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 and at least give them the hardest shot possible. Um, France played pretty well. Evan Fournier played pretty well. Got a couple other guys on France that played well. It's fun to see Popovich too talk to them after the game because he's known for bringing guys from the Olympics onto his teams for tryouts. So I forgot his name, but one of the point guard, the backup point guard for or starting point guard for France, who played extremely well. Popovich had like a good 10-minute talk with after the game before they even got the gold medals. Um, but I don't think it was Team USA won the Olympics for basketball. I think Kevin Durant won the Olympics for basketball. Because it was a pretty hard carry. And if we're talking about disappointing performances, Damian Lillard did not play well in almost any of the games. Um, but I think that might just be because it was his first time there, so it's a process. Um, we'll see next time.
I mean, well, it's funny. I think it was Evan Fournier or maybe somebody else. I know one of the NBA players that's on one of those foreign teams. But they pretty much said when the Team USA was looking vulnerable, they say, "Yep, Team USA is hella talented, but you see what happened when you put a bunch of selfish players together." And and yeah, it showed a struggle, and that just showed right there the importance of having like playmakers, guys to facilitate, how much that changes an offense and makes it
Role
more
players, yeah.
effective. Yeah, to balance it out.
Like for
Yeah.
France personally, Rudy Gobert is a perfect
Mhm.
fit for them. Like he's not
Yeah.
expected to do a lot on offense, but like the amount he contributed defensively and even a few passes that he made and rebounding was unmeasurable. I think he did better than I think he did better than any big man on Team USA in that game. Um,
Yeah. I'm honestly of the mindset that the guys on Team USA, as you said, they were jacking up shots. Yeah, it was really just a matter of them in their heads knowing that they're better than everyone on all of the other teams. So they're just out there. They were just essentially out there having fun, just screwing around. They honestly did not really care. I mean, sure, I'm not gonna say they didn't care whether they win or lose. Like, I'm sure anytime a basketball player touches a court, like they want to win, but the sense of urgency wasn't there. They
right.
were just trying to show off their skills in
Like
a sense. Even Kevin Durant, like I'm based on what I saw in those games, and then like even past the Olympics, like even him, he just looks like so casual and nonchalant, like he's just
yeah.
having a workout out there.
And in the third and fourth quarter, like when they were down 15 to Australia, like you could see there was a massive difference between the first and second half. Like I don't know if they like. Of course, they changed their sense of urgency, but I feel like there was also the, they probably went into the locker room and were like, all right, we really got to step it up. We got to play smarter. Like, stop jacking up shots. We're all good. We understand that, but now we have to have some structure because the whole second half they blew them out of the water and it wasn't close. Like just overall playmaking. Maybe not as good still on defense, but playmaking, passing, like no one was playing selfish basketball anymore in the second half because they knew they had to win. Um,
Yeah.
but
Also,
it was good.
remember what I told you too, before when we were like having that debate about the All Star game versus the Olympics game. I told you with this new format, the All Star games are way better than the Olympic, way more exciting, way more competitive, way more defense nowadays. Thanks to LeBron on that. Plus, because they added incentives to like the winning team get stuff on like the final the All Star MVP charities or whatnot, and then the whole like essentially street rules in the fourth quarter. Whatever your score is, just yeah, whatever the leading team score is, I think is what add 8 points, and then that's game, whatever, and the shot clock goes off. Adding stuff like that, you see the guys out there essentially competing like you would like with your friends out on the street. We see more defense and hustle in the All Star games now.
Well,
So
I think that's important too to have incentive
yeah,
because like anytime there's no incentive, it's not nearly as entertaining. It's the same with the Pro Bowl. Like Pro Bowl is
yeah,
very hard to watch because there's no incentive really. I believe with baseball, their All-Star game is whoever wins um, that team's conference gets the seventh game at home in the World Series. So whoever makes the World Series gets the home field advantage in the seventh game. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong about that. Um,
true. They have the incentives, but at the same time, baseball is just not nearly as exciting as basketball. Let's be real.
Everyone's got an opinion. I mean, I
You're a
know
fan of
I've
both. I know you feel the same way
I know
to
a
an
few
extent.
people who would say the other way around, but I personally have always been in a mentality that basketball and football are my favorite. So, um, but I know a lot of people who are big baseball heads, um, some that watch this too, who will always praise baseball, and I don't have a problem with that. I think everyone's got a certain sport that they absolutely adore.
Yeah.
So now I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to add to the Olympics because I want to say there was something. Oh, I well, I didn't mind France being there because France beat Team USA, so it's kind of a revenge thing. I really wanted to see Luca make it from Slovenia, and
Yeah, I know.
he did not play like he played. He had a triple double, so everyone's going to say he was absolutely phenomenal, and he was a good. He did well in the game, but understand he also shot 5 of 18, and for a guy that was scoring 25, 30 in the last 3 or 4 games, him scoring 11 points or whatever it was, and then 10 rebounds, 10 assists, was nowhere near what he was doing in the other games. So I think that was, and he knows that too. I know he was super upset about it, but it is what it is. I I don't know. It was. I really wish we
Yeah.
could have saw Luca versus Team USA.
Yeah, and it was also his very first loss playing overseas. Like that
Yeah.
was interesting. He's 17-1.
Um. So Ed, I don't think I have anything else to cover in regards to Team USA and the Olympics. Shout out to Kevin Durant though he carried. Uh,
Hmm.
Nothing else to add. Now, really quick, I want to talk about something that's probably not as big of a storyline as everything else, but CJ McCollum is now going to be the president of the NBA Players Association,
Mm,
filling in for Chris Paul. So it's a small thing in the news, but I still think it's a big deal. I mean, I think a lot of guys like CJ McCollum, and he's well respected, and he knows a lot about what players want, and I think he's a good fit because I think almost everybody's friends with him.
yeah,
Now, but I do think that Chris Paul was also the perfect for that as well. But I don't think Chris Paul wanted to do it anymore, so I think it was a sense of him stepping down. So I think that's a good fit. Not much really to add to it, but I
yeah.
I like the addition.
He's low key preparing for his departure from the league in within a couple
Yeah.
years.
Um, Now I want to talk about. So, what do you want to talk about next? Do you want to talk about expectations for next year for free agency? or do you want to cover something else first?
Yeah, I want to cover something else. It's about the upcoming season. The
Hmm.
confirmed date for that opening night is October 19th. No, but well, what I have an issue with coming in next season is I found out that the play-in round of the playoffs is going to transition into the next season, and I am 100% against that. And I was almost scared of this happening because they brought it in this year that the play-in round was going to just become a normal part of the format. I was on board with it for the bubble because of what happened. Um yeah, the season got cut short in March, I believe. Was it? Yeah, it was
Yeah,
March, and then the player. How many months passed by? Was it? I think it was. It wasn't until like June that the bubble started, right? And they played like those quick a little bit of regular season games. I think each team played like
yeah,
10 games who were
right.
in the bubble, and then yeah, the playing round because essentially they wanted to give teams who still had a shot to get in the playoffs like an opportunity to be there because like they obviously wouldn't be able to reach the 82 game mark. So it made sense there. But then the fact that they brought it in to this season, I was against that already. And we saw that LeBron James was against it. I mean, I think I think he was a bit cruel in this statement, and I'm sure a bunch of other stuff were going through his head, like the injuries and stuff. So it was probably a bunch of built up frustration. He said whoever came up with the idea of the playing around, like I guess for this season, needs to be fired.
They
So
did him
that's
a
pretty.
favor.
Yeah, that was pretty harsh, LeBron.
Uh,
Did it? No, they were already in the eighth spot or seventh or eighth. They were
I'm,
already there.
yeah, I'm saying so they didn't have to get swept by the Suns right off the rip. Or yeah.
I don't. I mean, sure if you want to think of it that way, but
Um,
I am 100% against it going in following seasons because there is no reason for it. Like it was literally an idea that came in to give those teams who had a fighting shot at the playoff a chance to compete and earn their playoff spot. But now that we're going to be going back to the 82 game seasons, well, this year was 72, but still that's a lot of games and they played through the whole season. There's no need for the play-in round. So I am 100% against it.
I'll debate that slightly. I don't like the play-in particularly, but I think that it's a good fit for teams that start to figure it out towards the end of the season and are let's say you have a team that's like playing played really well for most of the season, and then the final 20 to 30 games, they're playing really bad, but they're still going to sneak into the eighth seed. And then you have a team that's like, I don't know, like let's say like 18 and maybe 20 and 10 going into the final 30 games, like a team that gets really hot at the end, and they're the ninth seed. So like, a lot of those people will think that the ninth seed might have been way better in the playoffs than that eight seed, but I don't think it should be one game because I don't think that really reflects who's the better team. So like if you're gonna do that, I think it should be a series of best two out of three. Like I don't think they need to go through a 7 game series, but at
Yeah,
least if you have someone win two straight against the other team, you'll know that they were the deserving team to get in. So I don't particularly love it, but at least that way it wouldn't feel like that the number 9 seed could just get lucky and someone could be red hot and then they advance into the playoffs over the A team even if they had two or three less wins. Like, 'cause that's aggravating to see.
yeah.
Um,
I'm not just the ninth spot, even the 10th spot
right.
has a chance. I don't care. I'm still against it because I have a couple remedies for like the those analogies you brought up just now on those situations. Number one, the most obvious one, load management. Load management can not monitoring limiting your load management could play a role in that at the Brooklyn Nets and Kawhi no, the Brooklyn Nets, I don't even know if I'll call that load management, but playing the regular season games that can make a difference right there. Two, again, this season I will make an exception for my criticism because I do acknowledge that there were a lot of teams, well, whose games had to get postponed because of COVID protocols, and then even some players having to miss games because of COVID protocols. So I'm a bit more lenient on like it being. in this season, but the next upcoming season,
Yeah,
starting on schedule in October, you're playing 82 games.
it's a bit
If
weird.
you if you can't figure it out in 82 games, you don't belong in the playoffs. I'm sorry.
So here's another thing in regards to load management. What if it's kind of a secret way to prevent load management? Like, what if you have a couple star players who are like, let's say, around a 5 or 6 seed? Like, I think the Hawks would be a good example. They were the fifth seed. Like,
Hmm.
and they were thinking about resting Trey Young because they were pretty much locked into the fifth seed. Um, but then they start to realize that if they slide into, like the seventh or eighth seed, they have to go into a play-in tournament. So it kind of forces Trey Young to play throughout the season instead of doing this load management crap where they have to rest him for like, you know, 15 to 20 games.
Well, I have an even better solution for that. I will not involve the playing tournament. Simple. Guys want to miss like 20 games for the season? You know what? Fine. Let them do it. Cut their pay. I think that's an incentive right there.
What if, hear me out, what if you add now, this isn't necessarily a good idea. I think this is just more an entertainment idea. I don't think this is necessarily a great idea. But what if you, instead of having a play-in tournament, you make the 9 and 10 seeds um, playoff spots, but instead of that, they do a play-in for the 9 and 10 seeds to get into the playoffs, and it's kind of like a March Madness esque tournament with nine from the ninth seed all the way to the bottom of the league, and they do this whole bracket. So the winners for each of those get into the playoffs as a 9 and 10 seed, and would face like the 1 and 2 seed.
Totally against that. Number one through number eight in the playoff, like it's always been. Because I bet you that former NBA legend, they wish they could have came in with in the ninth spot.
Yeah, I just think it would be. I would really like to see a March Madness esque tournament, but the thing is, there's no way to put that in the league without there being direct incentive. So
Yeah.
like that's why I mentioned a playoff spot. I don't necessarily agree with there being extended playoff spots, but that would be the only way to have direct incentive for teams to try in that tournament. Unless they did, um, like a salary cap reward or something, and they did it at the mid-season. Um,
Yeah.
but again, that would also make the best team get more salary cap. So it's difficult. I do want to see some sort of bracket type with the NBA, but nothing crazy. Just to see, what team would actually win that. But the playoffs will always be, or should be, as they are. Sadly, the NFL, we just saw they extended. If you didn't hear, instead of 16 NFL games, now they're doing 17, which has been different from what they've done almost all of NFL history. So now there's 17 games in a season instead of 16, and instead of one bye week where you get 1 week off, you get two bye weeks. And their excuse for that is that instead of there being four preseason games, they're only going to have three preseason games, I think. So they take one away from the meaningless games and add it to the regular season. Um, but it's weird because now you have all this history where teams are like, you know, 16 or like 16 and 0, or let's say, like they're bad and they were like 5 and 11. Now that's not a normal number anymore. It's gonna be like 5 and 12, or it's gonna be 17 and 0. And now everything's way different than it was in history. So I'm kind of a bit against it. Um, that's kind of why, I want a March Madness tournament, but it would mean that there would need to be incentive, and I don't think extending the playoffs probably would be the best idea. That's just the only incentive I could think of. Um, so I think that's why they're trying to do a play-in tournament to keep 8 teams still in it, but they want to add more entertainment and more viewership because their play-in tournament had a lot of viewership because they were probably some of the closest games in the playoffs only because they're right next to each other in the standings and it's to get into the playoffs. So like everyone loves seeing Steph Curry versus LeBron. Um,
Yeah, I was gonna say, let's be real. The only reason why I was excited is because of certain matchups. I don't think anyone was really all that interested in what was it, the Wizards versus the Pacers. I don't think many
yeah,
people were interested in that series, but it was the headliner like Steph Curry and LeBron, two guys who've been gone to like back-to-back NBA finals. Steph Curry, like he essentially had lost his team. He was injured for pretty much all of last season, and then Klay Thompson's not there, but then they managed to scratch and claw their way to get there. And then the Lakers, like it was just a mess of a season all year for them. So now, so it was just a great storyline between on those two
Yeah,
superstars.
and
So that's the reasoning.
I think we're gonna be grateful for it at some point if they keep it going on. Like we're gonna have a situation where it's gonna be like I can't think of a team that would be there, but like let's say the Spurs when they had DeMar DeRozan, I think they were in the
Yeah.
play-in tournament, and like let's say you know Steph Curry's got Klay Thompson and half his team back, so I don't think they'll be in the same situation. But like let's say it was Steph Curry, like let's say the Spurs were the 8 seed and the Warriors were the 9 seed, and they got to play each other, and the Warriors got in over the Spurs. I think we would all be grateful to see Steph Curry versus like anyone on the Spurs team, like at least for terms of entertainment in the NBA playoffs. Like no one wants to see the Spurs get blown out by the number 1 seed.
Nice. So it's still a load of crap to me. The playing tournament needs to go. You have 82
I
games to
agree.
figure it. You have 82 games to figure it out. Like you see, if that's such a big concern, like team getting hot later on or like figuring stuff out, maybe the players just need to start taking the regular season game more seriously
Understand.
earlier on.
I completely agree with you. I'm more playing
Yeah.
devil's advocate and the few positives that there are to the play-in tournament, but I agree that there shouldn't be a play-in tournament in general.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
Now, let's see. Next, so let's talk about NBA teams in general, since we were just talking about standings. Um, I
Let's
fe-
start with the Lakers naturally.
the Lakers should be the 1 seed next year.
I think so too.
I'll give exception to the Jazz and maybe even the Suns too. Not that I think they're better teams. I just think that they're similar to the Bucks were a couple years ago. I think they're regular season warriors. They're like one of those teams that they don't rest many players. They keep most of their guys in and they're trying to win as many games as possible. So I could see them taking the 1 or 2 seed, but only because the Lakers might be resting players. But
I
the
think
Lakers
on top,
should be the
yeah.
best team in the West.
Yeah, I think in addition to that, it's also going to be like I think they're going to have like Frank Vogel and LeBron since he's on the floor coach. They're going to have a lot of homework and studying to do to figure out like how what lineups are going to be, what rotations are going to be most effective.
They must like Frank Vogel though, because he just got extended. So they must like something
Yeah,
that he's doing. You know, I'm curious to see the starting lineup because there's been a lot of projections that Carmelo is going to start, and I don't know if I
yeah,
necessarily agree with that. Um,
yeah. I have mixed feelings about. Well, I know that Magic Johnson said the AD needs to play center for them, but at the same time, since they brought Dwight Howard back, and they have Marc Gasol. I'd much rather see AD playing power forward because we clearly see he. I mean, when he plays center, he makes a great center in this league. But where he's most effective and at his best is at the power forward spot. So I think having him at power forward and having Melo back him up at the power forward would make most sense.
I want to say it's tough because I kind of want to see Dwight Howard start, but at the same time, I think they need someone coming off the bench that's a good center, and I don't think Marcus Gasol is as good as everyone's making him out to be, at least at his age. Like I know he's not scoring a lot, but everyone understands that he does a lot for the team. But I still
Hmm.
don't think he's nearly as valuable as Dwight Howard is. I
Yeah, that's why I think Marc Gasol should start at center and be out there with AD to helping like on the on the glass and whatnot. But then when the second unit comes in, have Dwight Howard out there to like with his energy running the floor because he's still a pretty athletic center.
Yeah,
So
my
I
my
think that
thing
would be
is
more effective.
I really want to see Carmelo on the floor with Marcus Gasol. And I don't know where that would work, mostly because Marcus Gasol still's got really good distribution skills, and Carmelo is now probably going to become one of your main shooters. Not
Yeah.
maybe your main scorer, but your main shooters. So I think Marcus Gasol is really good for floor spacing and finding Carmelo an open shot. I just don't know how to work him into the lineup with those two on there, like who you would put. I mean, you'd probably have to keep LeBron on the floor, and then maybe Westbrook and Horton Tucker would be good. Um,
I honestly don't think it will be in their best interest to have LeBron and Westbrook on the floor together for like majority of the game. Like obviously in the first quarter and the fourth quarter, yeah, but in between, I think you want to have them on at separate times.
I think that Melo and LeBron should be on at the same
Yeah,
time, and I think that Westbrook and Carmelo should be avoided together.
yeah.
It's not anything against Westbrook. I just think that they don't mesh well together in what they're looking for. Like you're trying to find Melo an open shot, and I don't think Westbrook dribbling into the lane and kicking it out to Melo is going to necessarily work, or Westbrook's necessarily going to do that. I think Westbrook working
Yeah.
with AD would be really good on the pick and roll.
Yeah. Definitely.
Um,
Yeah.
I
And I
think,
think I think LeBron will be better at like because with Melo, and it is funny thing with Melo's offensive skill set, he may not be like that crazy like face up ball handler like KD is, but similar to KD, he excels at scoring in like an ISO situation. Like
yeah,
maybe you
finding
get the
his own
ball to
shot.
yeah, get the ball to him like either up on the elbow or in the post and let him use like his footwork to create his shots. And I think LeBron is better at like feeding the post than Westbrook is.
So, if I had to guess, I would say that Russell Westbrook's going to start. Well, so we'll say Russell
Yeah.
Westbrook will start at point guard, obviously.
Yeah.
LeBron at small forward. AD's going to start, whether it be a power forward or center. That's the big question that everyone's going to ask. Because
Yeah.
if you have him play center, then you're probably going to assume that Melo's going to play power forward starting.
Yeah.
But if you have AD play power forward, you're probably going to have Marcus Gasol start because I think you're still going to plan on putting Dwight Howard off the bench coming in.
Yeah.
Um, Now the shooting guard, I'm going to assume that Horton Tucker is still going to start.
Yeah,
Um,
I think so too.
Let me
Oh wait, hold on. I know they were pursuing Buddy Hield. Did they actually get him?
no, not yet.
Okay.
Um, I'm just looking over this team. They have such a good team, and I know all these people are out there like, oh, this is the retirement home squad. Like,
I'm surprised you're not on board with that.
no, I'm not because I think they're getting away with having low expectations, and I hate that. Um,
I don't think that's necessary. Well, maybe the T generally, yeah, but you know what the narrative will be at the end. He said, "Oh, LeBron was trying to scratch and claw ways to get the next championship. He's done now." That's what the narrative will be at the end.
well, so here's the thing: are you going to start Horton Tucker? Or are you going to start Malik Monk? Because he's another person that they just signed who plays
Yeah,
very well.
they're both pretty young. I'm gonna say start Taylor Horton Tucker just because like he already knows how to play with
Like,
like LeBron. Like in terms of chemistry, I think it would be better to have him starting.
let's say your starting five is Gasol,
Hmm.
AD, LeBron, Horton Tucker, and Westbrook. Your bench, your next starting five, or your second string, would involve Melo, Dwight Howard,
Hmm.
um, Malik Monk, Kendrick Nunn, and probably Wayne Ellington.
Yeah, that's right.
So you have such a stacked backup group. Like it's unbelievable. Um, they
Wait,
have Kent
I
Bazemore
think we're
too,
Ken Bazemore. Yeah,
or Bazemore, yeah.
I think we're missing one more
Trevor
name.
Ariza,
Yes. Well, yeah, he's probably like 38 now, but
36. But like,
oh, I didn't know they were the same age. He was the same age as LeBron. I thought he was older for some
so
reason.
like you have such a stacked team that no one's talking about. Like I don't care how old they are. They're still very good players. Like that is
Yeah,
half of those guys in that second string would probably start on most teams. Um, I
yeah, they're potentially starter caliber. Like they
or
have
at least six
quality guys.
man usually. Yeah.
Yeah, they have quality guys.
So
If I were was stacked, I mean,
I think Kendrick Nunn is a
yeah,
stacked backup point guard. Like that is a great backup point guard to have because he's a starter. He was a
yeah.
starter on the Heat for the most part.
Well, I know in the bubble, like Eric Spo, it was hard to keep track of who was starting point guard because he kept flipping between him and Tyler Hero.
Yeah,
I mean, I wouldn't say stacked, but I think he's a good starting point guard. But I mean, I definitely think that a quality, like, where I'd look at it is stacked is because, like we saw previously, we knew the Lakers were going to be a juggernaut in the West, regardless of how bad or whatever bad role players they had. Just having LeBron and Anthony Davis together, and
yeah.
now you throw in Russell Westbrook, and then you have some quality guys around them. So,
We said they
yeah,
had like 6 or 7 pretty good players. Now we could say
yeah,
that they have like a team that's 12 people deep, like
yeah.
comfortably.
I definitely think, as of right now, on paper, you hear me on the air, that the Lakers this year they're better than they were last year.
I think they're
Yeah, yeah. I know you're probably gonna say this is probably the best version of them in terms of roster, compared to like the first year with LeBron and AD together. The only reason why I'm gonna say I'm gonna hold off on that is because I think they're better. I think they're better offensively now. But what the Lakers in that in their championship run, what made them so formidable? Because we knew they had terrible shooting and stuff. Their offense wasn't necessarily all that. But the thing is how watching Dwight Howard and JaVale McGee hustle so much, having big defenders like that, it made shots tough for teams, and they kept getting a lot of second chance points with the rebounding. So I think all of that hustle and stuff, like they were superior on the defensive end and in that department
Yeah,
the first year. So what'll change my mind this year and say that the team is better now than that first year for sure is I have to see for myself now how effective the offense is as compared to like how we're projecting it to be. So I have to see it to believe it to,
yeah,
you know,
and
cut it short.
we call it like a retirement squad, but if you look like, I mean, you take the old people out of there that they've signed, you still have Kendrick Nunn who's 26, you have Malik Monk's only 23,
Yeah,
um,
Horton Tucker is young.
Horton Tucker's young, I mean
Bazemore,
AD's young, but he was already on the team. Uh,
yeah, Bazemore, he's in his early 30s, I think, right?
yeah, Bazemore's only 32.
Yeah,
I mean, even Wayne Ellington's 33, and I know that's still on the older side, but like, I don't really like to call people that old until they start to reach like 35. Like 35 is when you could
yeah.
start worrying about if they're going to regress really hard. Um,
Thing is, guys like Ellington, since he left the Heat, I haven't really like followed him that much and see how well he was playing. I know in his last year with the Heat, his 3-point shooting like has started to decline.
I think that like no one's talking about Malik Monk signing, and I think that's a really good addition to the team. Um, I will say I don't think that their starting lineup is better than the Nets, only because I'm taking James Harden over Russell Westbrook.
Yeah,
Um, I mean we've talked about this. I think Kevin Durant is more in his prime than LeBron is. That's not a shot at him. I just think he's closer to his prime. So
yeah,
I
he is.
think yeah, I think the tie would kind of go to him. And then you'd take Kyrie. I mean, you take AD over Kyrie, but like they're not comparable really. But then you have the rest of the lineup is the Nets have Blake Griffin, and then I'm assuming DeAndre Jordan would be their starting center.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot to bring this up too. I think I saw a post something somewhere. I'm not sure how credible the source is or how legit it is, but I heard there's room that LaMarcus Aldridge might consider coming out of
That is
retirement.
true. He is considering it. I'm curious if he's going to go to the Nets or if he's going to go somewhere else.
If he goes and wins the championship, we could say he's the next Michael Jordan.
If he goes to the Lakers, he's a snake. Switches from the
Oh,
Nets to the Lakers. Just a
mm,
return.
yeah,
It's weird. I know he still did go out of his way to sign with the Nets too, but it's just funny if he just comes out of retirement and goes to the Lakers instead. But
yeah,
I like the Nets starting lineup slightly more, but I think the overall roster, I think the Lakers are better. Like they're
yeah. The Lakers
deeper.
have they have a better bench
Yeah.
than the Nets.
Um. Now let's talk about other teams because we pretty much project the Lakers and the Nets to be number one seeds on each side. And
Yeah,
as much as I don't like super teams, at least in that case, I feel like there's such big super teams instead of one being way better than the other. Like I thought the Warriors were
yeah,
way better than the Cavs, regardless of
yeah.
LeBron being there. I would love to see these two super teams go against each other because I feel like it's pretty evenly matched.
No,
Um,
I actually want to go into that a little bit before we transition to another topic, because something that I heard on the street is Skip Bayless and Shay to start debating about. I think it's something that like people need to sit there and consider. Like, what are your qualifications? Like, what standards do you set before you consider a team a super team? Because I've heard like some interesting takes from let's skip and Shannon. Like Shannon said, like for a team to be considered a super team, you need to have like three all stars and at least. And if you think about it, that is a fair point because the Miami Heat team with LeBron over there, LeBron, Bosh, and Wade. We recognize that as a super team because of those three stars. The Warriors, even before KD, Steph, Clay, and Draymond, who I mean, I heard some people call him a role player, but I'm pretty sure majority of the planet Earth thinks he's an all-star. Um, yeah, this even hey, we could even consider like the old Spurs team, like Tim, like back in the day, Timmy, Tony Parker, and Manu. Despite the fact he's a six man, I'm pretty sure most people consider him an all-star level player.
I
So do you think it's the three stars that make it a super team, or in the case, oh, I don't even know who's the best example I could put forth, but Skip was saying because you have like two guys who you can make a case for being the top five in the league, in LeBron and AD, and respectively, they're definitely like top top two or top three for their positions. That makes it a super team if they have good role players around them.
I think that to be considered a super team, you have to have two top 10 guys on your team and a third all-star. So it doesn't necessarily have to be another top 10 player, but a third all-star. So two top 10 players. So like that would be AD and LeBron, and then
Yeah.
James Harden and Kevin Durant, and then a third all-star. So Kyrie Irving and Russell Westbrook. So
Okay.
that's how I would create the threshold for a super team. Because like if you look at the Bucks, no, I don't think anyone considers them a super team because Chris Middleton's not a top 10 player.
Yeah, I
He's
know.
he's like
That's the
top
reason I'm
15 to
laughing.
20.
Yeah.
Giannis is top 5 or 6. And then Drew Holiday is a borderline all star. So like
Mm,
I don't consider that to be a super team. When you put those two teams though, I would consider that to be the threshold for super teams. And then also if you don't want to talk about just the stars, but players go like good talented players going out of their way to sign with your team. Like that's when you start to really see the super team kind of come together. So like not just that, but like when you got guys like Blake Griffin or so you have guys like Blake Griffin, Dwight Howard, Malik Monk, all these guys going out of their way to sign with these teams to build like huge benches because you know they have the sense that they're going to go out and win a ring. I think that's when you start to really build up a super team to full form. But it
yeah.
starts with the two top 10 players and then one all star outside of that.
It's fun. The reason why I started laughing is because I know I've heard Shannon Sharp say, "Oh, the Milwaukee Bucks are a super team."
They're
I don't
not.
think he doesn't actually could
Yeah.
believe it, but because it was a retaliation to Skip being Skip. But but your boy Kendrick Perkins, I might be wrong, but I think I heard him say the Bucks are a super team when he was bickering with Max.
He's an idiot.
I th- I think I said I think so I'm not 100% sure. So maybe he's not an idiot, but
I think that the Bucks are like that step
they're a
right
good
before a
team.
super team. Yeah, they're
Yeah,
so there's a super team and then the next step down would be a great team and then a good team. So like a good team is I would say like the Hawks and Knicks would be considered a good team.
yeah.
I mean, the Hawks
Be-
obviously looked way better than the Knicks did, but then you go to a great team, and I would say that's like the 76ers and the Bucks. Like that would be the
Yeah,
next threshold up, and then the super team is at the very top.
I think what would make the Bucks a super team is if you get another player that's like around Chris Middleton level, or even just slightly below. Like I'll say this like just a name. You throw CJ McCollum on the Bucks. I think then you can consider it a super team.
I would say a step up from that. Like if you gave me,
But if you're still having Drew Holiday, who we said the borderline all star,
yeah,
I
I would
think
say it's a different form of a super team because it's not like the ones that we're talking about, like the traditional build ones. But if you
yeah,
say, I'm trying to think of a good player that would fit the threshold.
well, Clay Thompson, or that too much?
I consider Clay Thompson to be right near, like, well, when he's healthy, very close to the threshold of a top 10 player. It's because I think
He's
he's
kind of
better. I think he's way better than Chris Middleton personally.
yeah.
When he's
He's
healthy.
a he's a tough player to like evaluate and compare to others just because like his game is reliant on being with another like primary ball handler.
Um, I'm trying to think of a good example. I think that if you, I'm like looking at the teams now because I'm trying to think of a player that would.
What about like a Tobias Harris or no?
I I would say I think a good one to say would be like Paul George because I don't consider him to be a top 10 player right now. He's probably
I
10 to
don't.
15 if you
Yeah,
had so that would be a different form of super team. But now that you have Drew Holiday, who is probably like 15 to 20 range in terms of top players, um, solely mostly because of his defense. And then you have Chris Middleton, who's I would say around 15, like the lower threshold. And then you have Paul George, and then you have the top five in Giannis. So like that's a different form. Instead of having two top 10 players, you have a bunch of the guys between 15 and 20, which would make it, but you have four instead of three. So I would consider that to be a super team on a different threshold. Um,
Yep. Okay.
it's I just wish that Milwaukee actually had a super team. And I would have told you Julius Randle too before the season started. I mean before the playoffs started, not the season. Um, but then we got to watch playoff Julius, and things were different.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that would be a good place to put it. Now, in terms of teams that entered the great threshold, do you think any
Would
teams entered the great threshold in the offseason?
would you say the Miami Heat?
I
Could
think the Miami Heat are the closest. Um,
yeah,
because we already considered them to be six seed worthy. I think they were a six seed this
yeah,
year, right? So
yeah,
now you added Kyle Lowry, who I think is a more consistent starting point guard, and then you brought someone else in, right? You re-signed Duncan Robinson.
yeah. I
Um,
think we did bring someone else, and I need to double check. Team roster.
oh well, like you brought in PJ Tucker. So regardless of whether you like him
Yeah,
or not,
it was
he's a
him.
great
Yeah,
defensive addition.
yeah.
And then you have to keep in mind too, you're going to have a assumed fully healthy Victor Oladipo. He's not going to start, but that is a great asset off the bench. So like that's someone that's probably going to get you 10 to 15 off the bench. So I
Hmm.
think that you might not be in the great threshold yet, but you're at least at the peak of the good threshold. Like you're the next team under the Bucks and Sixers. So now you're knocking on the door because I would consider that team to probably be better than the Hawks now.
Yeah,
Unless John Collins takes another big step and gets even better than he is.
I think the other team that will be like probably in that ballpark that the Heat will have to compete with now, potentially the Bulls.
Yes. So I'm glad you brought that up because I think that there's a lot of hate around Lonzo. I used to be a Lonzo hater, mostly
Well,
because of his father.
for obvious reasons.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, obvious reasons. But we got to understand that I would
he's a
say, a
good.
top 7 or 8 point guard. Not because of his scoring.
Well, yeah, but
Um,
I think the top 7 or 8, like putting him in the top 10. I mean, maybe I'm not sure if we'll have time today, but maybe we need to like discuss who we have top 10 in respective
Like,
positions.
real quick, I would still put Kyle Lowry over him, and I would put like Damian Lillard. I would put I mean Steph
Oh, wait,
Curry,
Kyle
Kyrie.
Lowry, Damian Lillard, Kyrie. Wait,
Uh,
oh wait, I just got mixed up. We said Kyle Lowry, Steph Curry, Damian Lillard, Kyrie, Russell Westbrook,
Chris Paul.
Chris Paul.
Uh,
Um, you see, now this is where it gets difficult because there are some guys who they list at point guard, but we don't acknowledge them at point guard like Luca.
I am going to say that I think he is better than Mike Conley right now. I would rather have him than Mike
Yeah,
Conley. So,
yeah,
and I'm looking at this tier list, and they had Mike Conley at 10. So I'll say he's probably 9 or 10 around there if we can't get him in the top 7. So I would say he's right around there, and mostly in terms of distribution. You don't need him to score a lot, but I think that he's a better addition than everyone's making it out to be. Um,
mhm.
and everyone's like, "Oh, you paid him 80 million." I think it'll be worth it in the future.
Oh wait, hold on, we missed another day with his little brother Lamelo.
Lamelo, yeah.
Lamelo is his faith he's better than him.
I guess you could put De'Aaron Fox above him too.
Yeah, yeah, De'Aaron Fox.
So
So all right, that's 8 names we have.
I would say he's probably 10. We'll put him top 10, and if not, he's very close to the top 10.
Oh, where do all right? How about what about Rondo? Do you think Rondo's too old now?
Too old, and
Okay.
I
We didn't even get to see playoff Rondo again
yeah.
this time either.
So
Okay.
I would say he's right near a top 10 point guard. You have Zach Levine, who is a top 4 shooting guard, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
I was gonna say he could. Yeah, I was gonna say like probably within the top 5 range because honestly, the two guard position really isn't all that strong in this era.
And he's honestly knocking on the door to being a top 10 player. He's not there yet. He's still top 15 though. He's definitely top
Mm.
15. I would take. I think he's very close to where Middleton's at, but I think he's better than Middleton, at least
Yeah,
in
he's
terms of scoring, because he's scoring like 40 a game almost half the time.
he's yeah, I consider him like around the Jimmy Butler
Yeah,
threshold. I still have Jimmy better than him, but he's somewhere in that ballpark.
I would say Bradley Beal's better than both.
Better than both?
Yeah,
No. Well, I think he's the best pure scorer among
yeah,
them,
okay, that's
but
fair.
I'm not
Best
saying better
scorer.
than
Yeah,
both. Because we have despite whatever people want to talk about bubble, we seen what Jimmy Butler looked at as a number one option and the impact he has on team, like the guys around him,
yeah.
the all around package. Yeah,
So you have Lonzo and Levine, and then you have DeMar DeRozan, which you can flame him all you want. He's still a top 20 to 25 player. He's
yeah.
fringe all star. He's not necessarily an all star, but he's fringe all star. So that's three really good players. Now you don't know who's going to play power forward because Markkanen's gone. Um,
Mm,
but you also have Nikola Vusavich, who is considered an all star
yeah,
center. He's
yeah,
probably the third or fourth best center. If as long as we're not counting AD as a center.
yeah.
Um,
We're not Embiid, Jokic. Then I have Towns.
Towns, yeah, and then Vucevic probably. But
Yeah,
Vucevic is very good defensively, and he still averages 15 to 20 a game. So you have a
you
very
have him better
solid
than
group of
Rudy
four.
Gobert.
All around, yes, but
Okay,
not defensively. Um,
okay.
I think that that group, as long as they can get maybe like one or two like good role players, is it's not a super team, but it is very close to a great team. It's a similar build up to what the Sixers did with Simmons and Embiid. Like like you know, let's say Embiid is your Zach Levine, and then Simmons is kind of I would say Lonzo Ball comparison. And then you have Vucevic is close to your Tobias Harris esque area, and then um, DeMar DeRozan is like your Seth Curry in a sense. So it's a pretty
Mm,
solid lineup. I don't think they're better than the Sixers yet, just because Embiid's better than I think Levine
mm,
personally, obviously.
yeah.
But I think that team is going to be very competitive, and I think they're capable of beating almost anybody in the league on a good night. Like if they have a perfect night and they're hot shooting, I think they can beat almost anyone.
I'm
Um,
not gonna lie. It almost reminds me of what the Bulls did a couple years back. I think of 2017. Remember Rondo, D Wade, and Jimmy Butler.
yeah,
It almost reminds me of that.
I think that they should be better than that.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Now, the Knicks is another one I want to talk about. I don't know if they really moved much. I know that Max Kellerman thinks that Kemba Walker doesn't change anything. I personally think that Kemba Walker makes the team better. I'm not going to say drastically. I think slightly is a good way to put it.
I think drastically. I mean, hell, I know Kemba's not nowhere near what he was, but I think that's a drastic step up, and especially considering that you still have Derrick Rose there too
Yeah,
as a
coming off the
backup
bench.
point guard. I think that's a big difference. Because
And
first of all, both one of the criticisms that the Knicks had, the fact that they saw Julius Randle bringing the ball up the floor
right.
sometimes.
And now you have RJ Barrett, who was almost tied with Julius Randle with the two most minutes in the entire NBA. So you expect RJ Barrett to get even better than he was last year and probably gain a little bit more confidence. So you expect him to do better. Now, and then you have Emmanuel Quickly, who was in his first year and was third or fourth in Rookie of the Year voting. He did really well. So I feel like Kemba Walker though he's from New York, so similar to Melo, I think that no matter who you are as a player and how you play, whenever you get to play for your home team, you kind of bring a different sense of your skills to the team. Like when Melo returned to New York, he was um, a lot of people will say I'm not sure if he's better on the Nuggets or Knicks, but you could see that he was putting a lot more effort in on the Knicks because it was his home. So I feel like I can expect that from Kemba, and I might see part of his Charlotte Kemba Walker. I don't think we'll see Boston Kemba Walker, but I don't think it'll be like as good as Charlotte Kemba Walker. But I think he's better. He's going to be better than he was in Boston, at least. Um, but it's hard to evaluate. I think that he definitely helps. And having Derrick Rose back is going to help a lot too. And now you have Evan Fournier too, whether that be coming off the bench or starting. I think he's going to be starting since he makes 80 million. Um, so now you have like Fournier. You added Kemba Walker, and then you have R.J. Barrett, Julius Randle, Mitchell Robinson, Taj Gibson coming off your bench as well, Derrick Rose. Um, you have, I would say you're 8 to 9 deep in at least good to decent players, like
Hmm.
good players. So I think that they'll get better than they were last year. And I think that if you're going to go and try to compete with the Hawks, Kemba Walker is a good start to at least making the series closer. I still think the Hawks are
Yeah.
better though because I think John Collins is a really underrated power forward, and Trey Young's very close to being a superstar. Um, Hawks didn't really change much. Is there any other teams that went under any drastic changes?
No, I don't think so. But there is a drastic change that I'm hoping for that I don't know the news and media maybe they're just trying to get my hopes up. Maybe they're trying to make me feel what the Knicks fans have felt for like over the past 10 years. But word on the street is the Sixers are trying to make a big push to move replace the brick on the team for some water. And the analogy I mean trade Ben Simmons, as I said, the Sixers have to do for Dame Dollar.
I
And if that happens, as I told Ev before, I will cry. Like I kid you not. You whatever episode number that is on Sev audience, you will see Sean in tears.
I Oh, also real quick with regards to the Knicks, they re-signed Julius Randle again to a 4-year deal. And I know some people are flaming him because he didn't show up in the playoffs, but understand that the deal that he got was very team friendly for their future, so it was a good fit. Um, but talking about the Sixers and the trade for Damian Lillard, I want to talk about this because I don't know how this trade's going to work. Let's say it does happen. If the Sixers truly value Ben Simmons as a 4 first round pick guy, then they're pretty much near the situation where they feel like they only have to give up one player or maybe 1 or 2 picks along with Ben Simmons to get Damian Lillard. And I think that's a load of crap. I think you're going to have to give up a lot more than that. So I think to get Damian Lillard truly, you're going to have to get rid of Ben Simmons, obviously, because that's who you're trying to get rid of originally. I think you're going to have to give up at least 2 first round picks, and you're probably going to have to give up Tobias Harris and somebody else to get
I don't think
Damian
I
Lillard.
don't think I don't think and somebody else. I think Tobias Simmons and then some picks.
No,
No, first round picks?
no. Because
No,
understand,
no, no.
no,
How many? It depends on how many picks we're talking about.
I said two, and Tobias Harris and another player.
I
If
don't
you
even know how many picks they have, but I would say if you drop 4 picks in there, I think that's a fair trade.
Paul George was traded for 5 first round picks.
I, okay. First of all, we know why that happened because Kawhi Leonard basically held the Clippers by the you know what to get Paul George. So now that the fiasco, I didn't necessarily agree with that, but
So I'm just saying from that perspective, and you also have to keep in mind, unlike the NFL draft or any other draft, the NBA drafts usually the top 5 people are usually the ones that are going to be talented. You'll maybe find like 1 or 2 gems late in the draft. So if the Sixers have Embiid and Damian Lillard, those draft picks are only going to be like the 27th pick or 28th pick in the draft. They're going to be worth nothing. So you're going to have to give up a lot. So I think you're going to have to give up a bunch of picks. You're going to have to give up Tobias. And you're going to have to give up Ben Simmons to have a shot at getting him. And you'll probably have to give
yeah.
up a really good role player like Korkmaz or someone else.
I was gonna say Seth Curry is gonna stay.
Yeah, no, you need Seth Curry to stay. I agree with that. So
Oh
I
yeah,
would say
Oh yeah, all right. I got a good package for you. Simmons, Tobias Harris, Shake Milton, and 2 picks.
you'd with Shake Milton. I think you need at least 3 or 4 picks.
All right, but still, some people around the league still view Simmons as young talent, and you said that you never know. Simmons probably just needs to be molded to become
He
like the
does need to be
potential
molded, but I don't
superstar
think
that we
Chauncey
project
Billups
him to
can
be.
mold him into a superstar. So
You just gotta
I
believe.
I think that the trade is possible. You guys have good assets to give away, and I think Tobias Harris is one of those. I don't think giving up 3 or 4 first round picks to Tobias Harris and Ben Simmons is necessarily a bad thing because I think no matter what, even with all of that gone, I think Damian Lillard and Embiid are 100 times better than what you just gave up to have that duo. So I still think
Mm.
it's worth it. It'll cost a lot, but understand that you could always like if that team falls apart, you're still going to get a return on either Embiid or Lillard if you have to trade them away and get those picks back in a sense. So you're still
Yeah.
gonna it's a
Get
risk,
back,
but
get
it'll be
back to
worth
the
it.
process. Get
Yeah,
back to the process. You've
exactly.
been there before, Philly. Get back where you started.
So I think it'll cost a lot, but it would be worth every penny. I mean, if you had to trade 5 or 6 players, I would still do it and sign 4 people off the street to straight up
Yeah.
play.
Dame Dollar and Embiid. That's a
That
lethal duo.
that's 70 points a game right there.
Yep.
Without even adding anything else. And then you still have Seth Curry. If you're able to keep those three, then you're set. Yeah, I think you'll be fine.
It's funny. It's almost similar to like the Sixers team back in 2018 when 2019 when Kawhi stabbed me in the heart. I always said I did not think the 76ers team would get any better than that team without the best version of the Sixers we'll see in this era. And when all season happened, I was saying the Sixers, you need to keep Embiid, Jimmy Butler, JJ Redick. Those three were the most important to hold on to, and they sold there. But now this situation, it would be even better. I think. Wait, who did I say? Embiid, Butler, and
Reddick,
Redick.
yeah,
Yeah, versus Embiid, Seth Curry, and Lillard. That's even better. That's an
yeah.
even better situation than that would be.
And understand this, like it's not just that value that's being added to your team. Now you're in a conversation for a potential super team because you have 2 top 10 players. So now you're going to attract a bunch of other talent. You're going to have those Malik Monks. You're going to have those Kendrick Nuns who are willing to sign with your team and be on your bench because of the value you already have in your starting lineup. So it adds to that threshold as well. It would be a
Bottom
quick way to build a team.
Bottom line is, so I think Simmons is definitely gonna go. 'Cause I don't know if you heard the news that like ever since like the playoffs or whatever,
They
Simmons
haven't
has
talked
just
to him.
yeah no, they've tried to reach out. He's essentially been
Yeah,
ghosting the
yeah.
Sixers.
So
Yeah,
I think that and another quick thing because I know we're getting close to the end. With the Clippers, I really wanted to see because Reggie Jackson was a free agent. I really wanted to see the Sixers throw a ton of money at Reggie Jackson. Not like like I think he only got like 2 years, 3 years, 22 million, which is really undervalued for what he's worth. I could have if the Sixers were able to pay him 50 million. Keep in mind, Evan Fournier got 80 million, Lonzo Ball got 80 million. So I think Reggie Jackson has no problem getting 60 million over 3 years. So if they were able to get Reggie Jackson and have him, Reggie Jackson, Seth Curry, Embiid, and Tobias Harris, like assuming that you don't get Damian Lillard, I think that's a really good start. And then you trade Simmons for more pieces. But
yeah.
it is what it is. He re-signed.
All right. Now, I want to transition to this will probably be our last topic, but just for a quote that I personally found to be downright blasphemous from the one individual who we know of that loves to use the word blasphemy, blasphemous, and all the other versions of the word blasphemy more than anybody else, and that is the the sports media raging beast, Stephen A. Smith. Normally he's throwing that at Max, but it's funny because a lot of the commentary I saw on YouTube, many of the fans were on Max's side of this, saying, "Yeah, it's Stephen A. just yelling, but he's crazy for this." He said, "These are his words." He thinks that we're just looking like in terms of the offensive skill set between Steph Curry and Michael Jordan, are clearly two completely different skill sets. He's saying that their impact offensively, given their skill sets, are comparable. Steph Curry's in that class. Now, I can understand like his reasoning, like the way the Steph Curry stretches the floor out further beyond the arc than anyone we've ever seen. No doubt about that. And that opened up stuff for his teammates. His movement without the ball. It allowed a lot of backdoor cuts for guys who are generally not even that great finishers at the basket, but it creates so much space and makes scoring easier for the guys around them. I get all of that. That's not, my problem really is that we have seen other players who have tremendous impact offensively. Like the first one to come to mind is Shaq, the individual who we regard as the most dominant force we've ever seen on a basketball floor. Obviously, Shaq and Steph Curry, like their impacts are essentially polar opposites. But my problem is this: is Steph of the first time I ever heard anyone say this individual's offensive impact is comparable to Michael Jordan as an offensive player, and you jump to Steph Curry. You don't. I've never heard anyone say that for Shaquille O'Neal. Oh, I mean, everyone. It's funny because if you ask Stephen A, I'm pretty sure he'll say that Kevin Durant is a better offensive player than Steph Curry. I'm pretty sure most people will say that as well. Again, I've heard people say that KD might replace, could potentially go down as a greatest pure scorer of all time, but I never heard anyone say that his offensive impact is comparable to MJ's. Another one, I'm throwing LeBron in there. Like his balance between scoring and playmaking ability. I, I bet you if people said that, first we know all of the hate that they throw at LeBron. Not even if you say that, even if you don't say it's better, but you say it's comparable, impact wise. People say, "Oh, that's just nonsense and ridiculous." I just threw those names out there. There are others you could consider, like even Larry Bird, the scoring and playmaking level. So my big issue is I think that Stephen A. Smith was jumping the gun right there because he has been known to be very biased in favor of perimeter play.
Yeah,
So I think that that's a big issue. And I mean, and Steph, like I think the thing is too, the impact he brings, it's also just very entertaining to watch.
yeah.
So I think that was a big part of it.
So when we talk about comparisons, I hate comparisons, and
Yep.
that's on any level. Whether I feel like the more recent player is better or worse than the older player that's being compared. Now, it's it's hard for me to compare Steph to anybody in any timeline of NBA because whether I feel like he's top 5 or 10 all time, or whether you absolutely don't like that rating and you put him way outside of that, understand that what he contributes is very unique to what anyone else has done in basketball. No, like what he's done, almost no one else has ever done. Like the amount of threes he shoots a game and the way he goes about shooting those threes, and 15 feet behind a 3 point line, whatever it is, no one else does that. And like whether that be a good thing or a bad thing, it is so much different than what anyone else does. And so like if you're going about direct comparisons, like I know this is probably not what he meant, but like gameplay wise, they're completely different players. So like I know that's probably not what we're talking about, but now when we're talking about what they contribute on offense, I think that even if you gave the benefit of the doubt and said scoring wise that they were exactly the same, just for sake of argument, I think that what Michael Jordan does in terms of leadership, anger, and passion is way different offensively. Like, even if he's getting the ball most of the time, he's very much a floor general in regards to he's going to tell everyone what has to be done and where he's going to do to get it done. And that's where he's kind of similar to LeBron in that regard. Where Steph Curry's not necessarily that guy. He's very much a lax person where he'll go down there, and that's not a bad thing. He's a very relaxed mentality, and that could be very beneficial in late game scenarios, especially. But like they're completely different mentalities. Like MJ has a very similar mentality to like what Kobe had, and that's not me trying to compare it. It's just they both are absolutely driven by being the best on the floor. And Steph might be the best on the floor, but he's never that fierce in that regard. Um,
Yeah. Steph is more so he looked like he's always having fun on the
yeah,
floor.
and like I've always said, like 100 times over, if I had to pick an NBA player to play alongside, it would be Steph Curry because I feel like I do better with a more relaxed mentality than someone screaming at me 24/7. But everyone works differently. So but I just don't think it's fair to compare their game styles because I don't think they're anything alike, and I don't think their offensive contributions are anything alike either. Because
Yep.
MJ did a lot of stuff inside the 3 point line where that's not Steph Curry. Steph Curry does everything outside the 3 point line.
Yeah, and another thing that you need to take into account is the errors. Cause like this is why even when ranking the top best 3-point shooters of all time, and like a couple of years back, I think it might have been like 2017, I got into a heated argument with someone. He's a Steph Curry fan. Like I told him, I definitely think Steph Curry's in the conversation, but at the time, I still think Ray Allen the number one. And I kept on explaining to him, you need to take into account because we've heard the past sharpshooter, including Ray Allen, consider that the 3-point line is in a sense evolved. Like when if at first there was no 3-point line, but you had guys that are shooting jump shots, but it might have been like from that range, but they're automatically disqualified. And then when the 3-point shot was put into play, it was something new in the league. So taking three threes a game, that was
yeah,
considered a lot back then. And then in Ray Allen's era, like I'll say five threes was considered a lot. Like and Ray said if he like most guys back then, they were not allowed to shoot that
yeah,
volume of three. The coaches wouldn't allow it. And if they tried, the coaches would put them on the bench. So what Steph did, and this is credit to Steve Kerr and I guess also Mark Jackson, you could say because Mark Jackson called it before we seen it. He said this was the best shooting backcourt we've ever seen between Steph and Clay. But
yeah,
with Steve Kerr, he gave them the green light saying, maximize your talent, let it fly. This is something different. And
yeah.
that changed the landscape of the league. So that in a way helped unlock Steph Curry. So I think that's something that needs to be taken into account as well.
Yeah, and a lot of analytics also told you that regardless if you're missing threes in the long run, as long as you're making most of them, it was going to outweigh the misses and the amount of risk from shooting back there. So it was
Yeah, I
very
mean,
different. Um,
yeah, I that's a whole nother topic, but that right there is why some parts of me is anti
yeah,
analytic because we saw what happened with the Houston Rockets.
right.
I know both of our bloods were boiling with that.
So understand, I don't think it's fair to compare either of them because, well, I still think Michael Jordan's the best player of all time, and I think that LeBron is one of those people that's knocking on the door. And I think that Kobe is not necessarily there, but he was always in the conversation in terms of drive. Um,
Hmm.
but when you talk about Steph Curry, he's a completely different threshold. His career is nowhere near over either. So I feel like he's very easily going to be in the top 10 by the end of his career, but I haven't seen everything yet. And also at the same time, he's a completely different player. So I don't think they're comparable in any way.
To be honest, the comparison that I would actually, you might be surprised by this, but that I would acknowledge, like for Steph, and actually sit there and think about it, if we were to compare his offensive prowess to Magic Johnson's, that's because like I consider Steph Curry, like as a point guard, to be a very different kind of playmaker. I think this will be the first time maybe you've heard this word. I consider Steph Curry an off the ball playmaker, like the way he spaces the floor and how he's always moving off the ball and helping guys get open in that way. That's in a sense playmaking without the ball in your hands. Whereas Magic brought in like the highest level of ball dominant playmaking, pushing the fast break, create insane court vision, and like essentially creating the culture of the Showtime Lakers just because they're in a way polar opposites.
Yeah.
I think that it could be somewhat comparable.
I don't necessarily hate your comparison, but at the same time, I'm going to say that I've
Yeah.
never seen anybody close to Steph Curry before. Like, and that's not necessarily skill wise. I'm saying in what he does. So it's like
Yeah.
I feel like in the future, a lot of people will be able to make Steph Curry comparisons because I think you're going to start to see people play similar to Steph Curry. But like
Yeah, because it's something new in
he, yeah,
in a sense.
he's the new he's like the person who ushered this generation kind of thing, like with the way
Yeah,
he's going about it, I guess, because like there
yeah,
was Ray Allen taking a lot of threes and everything, but there's no one that's shooting nearly as much as he is from like 3 point range. So
yeah,
I think he's bringing in a whole new era. He's the leader of that, and now you'll be able to make comparisons in the future because you'll find more people that play like him.
yeah,
I think that's all I got.
yeah. Same here.
Without further ado, I don't think we have anything else to add. Maybe next week we'll do the All Star drafts, all time, And then I kind of want to do a current one too, just to see where we're at in comparisons of who we think are the best players in the NBA. We
Mm.
don't need necessarily a pool of players, but just out of curiosity, who we would pick for our 12 players on each team for current and all time. So maybe
I
we'll
think
do them on separate weeks.
I think we should also like discuss a list like a top 10 players at each position.
Yeah, we could do a historical. That would be really good.
Yeah, historical and current day.
Yes. So I think that we should do maybe top 10 for current and then top 5 for all time, depending on how much time we have.
Yeah.
And then go from there. But other than that, I got nothing else to add.
Yeah.
So without further ado, have a good rest of your week. Enjoy some summer league if you're into watching that. I know some people like to watch the young players, some people don't. If not, have a good relaxed week, and we will catch you next weekend.